I wasn't planning to take the desert road that day. The highway was blocked after a night of freezing rain, and the only way to reach my aunt's village was to cut across the go-by track that locals sometimes used in emergencies. It wasn't really a road, more like a direction marked by tire marks and old posts. The cold was sharper than I expected. Even inside the jeep I could feel it in my fingers. The landscape stretched out in every direction, flat and pale, with patches of snow clinging to the ground like something unfinished. About 2 hours in, I saw smoke in the distance. Not much, just a thin line rising against the gray sky. Out here, that usually meant someone was nearby. I slowed down, unsure if I should stop. The smoke came from a small camp, a single felt tent, half buried in snow, with a low fence made of scrap wood and wire. It looked fragile, like it had been put together slowly over many years. I parked a safe distance away and stepped out. The wind hit me immediately, biting through my coat. An old woman stepped out of the tent before I could call out. She must have seen the jeep from far away. She looked thin, wrapped in layers of heavy clothing. Her face was lined in a way that suggested both age and a life spent outdoors. She didn't look surprised to see me. "Road is bad today," she said, her voice steady. I nodded, unsure how to respond. "I saw your smoke." She gestured toward the tent. "Come warm yourself." Inside the tent it was warmer than I expected. A small stove burned steadily, filling the space with dry heat. The smell of tea and smoke hung in the air. She handed me a cup without asking if I wanted one. It was salty, not sweet, but it helped. We sat in silence for a while. I noticed there were no other people around. No animals either, which was unusual for someone living out here. "You live here alone?" I asked. She nodded. "My sons moved to the city. I stayed." She said it simply, without bitterness. I didn't ask more. Some things don't need explaining. We heard it before we saw anything. A low, distant howl carried by the wind. The old woman didn't react immediately, but her posture changed. She set her cup down carefully and listened. "Wolves," she said after a moment. I felt a tightening in my chest. I had heard about them in this region, especially in winter when food was scarce. "They come closer in cold," she added. I moved toward the tent opening, trying to see outside. The light was already fading. "How many?" I asked. She shook her head. "Enough." I suggested she come with me. It seemed obvious. The jeep could take us back to the main road, and from there to safety. But she didn't even consider it. "I have animals," she said. I hadn't seen any. She pointed behind the tent. "Shelter." When I stepped outside, I noticed a low structure built into the ground, partially covered with wood and cloth. Inside were 3 small goats huddled together. "They won't survive if I leave," she said. I looked at the animals, then at her. She wasn't being stubborn. She had made her choice already. I realized I wasn't leaving either. We worked without talking much. She showed me where she kept extra wood, and we brought it closer to the tent. We reinforced the fence as best we could, packing snow against the gaps. She had done this before. That was clear. "Fire keeps them away," she said. Most times didn't sound reassuring. The wind picked up again, carrying another distant howl. This one was closer. I checked the jeep. It would start, but the fuel wasn't enough for long detours. We were staying. It was fully dark when they came. At first it was just shapes moving beyond the edge of the light. Then I saw eyes reflecting, watching, waiting. There were at least 5 of them. They didn't rush in. They circled, testing the distance, studying us. The old woman stood near the fire, holding a long stick. She wasn't afraid in the way I was. She was alert, focused. "Stay near the light," she told me. One of the wolves stepped closer, its body low, cautious, but not hesitant. I realized then how hungry they must be. We kept the fire going strong. Every time one of the wolves came too close, she would step forward, shouting sharply, striking the ground with her stick. I followed her lead, though my voice didn't carry the same confidence. They backed off, but only a little. It went on for hours. They weren't just passing through, they were waiting. I kept thinking they would give up, but they didn't. Hunger doesn't give up easily. Sometime past midnight, we heard a noise behind the shelter, a low bleating, one of the goats. We ran around the tent, and I saw one of the fence panels had loosened. A wolf was already pushing through. Without thinking, the old woman moved straight toward it. She shouted, louder than I had heard before, and swung the stick hard against the wood. The wolf jumped back, startled. I grabbed a burning branch from the fire and held it out, stepping beside her. Together we forced it back. My hands were shaking, but she didn't hesitate. Cold became harder to ignore as the night dragged on. We took turns watching, adding wood to the fire and checking the fence. The wolves kept their distance now, but they didn't leave. Sometimes they would disappear into the dark, only to return from another direction. I started to understand something about her. She wasn't fighting them out of bravery. She was simply doing what needed to be done. There was no alternative for her. Just before dawn, one of the wolves made a sudden move. It darted in faster than the others had before, aiming for the shelter. I reacted too slowly. The old woman didn't. She stepped directly into its path, raising her arms and shouting. It hesitated just long enough for me to get close with the burning branch. The flame made the difference. The wolf backed off, retreating quickly this time. I realized how close we had come to losing one of the animals. She didn't say anything, just turned back to the fire. When the sun finally rose, the wolves were gone. Not far, I suspected, but out of sight. The light made everything feel less threatening, even though the cold was just as sharp. We checked the fence again. It held barely. The goats were still there, pressed together, quiet. The old woman poured tea as if it were any other morning. "You see," she said, "they test, then they leave." I nodded, though I wasn't sure if they had truly left. I used my phone, climbing a small rise nearby until I found a signal. It took several tries, but I eventually reached someone in the nearest settlement. I explained the situation as simply as I could. They said they would send help people used to dealing with wolves. It might take a few hours. When I returned, she was feeding the goats, moving slowly but steadily. "You can go when they come," she said. I didn't answer. It didn't feel right to leave immediately. By midday, we heard an engine. A truck approached from the west, carrying two men I recognized from the region. They had rifles, not for hunting, but for protection. They checked the area, confirming what we already knew. The wolves had been circling, but had moved on for now. Hard winter. One of them said, "They take more risks." They helped reinforce the fence properly, using stronger materials they had brought. The old woman thanked them, but she didn't seem relieved, just prepared. I left that afternoon. The road was still rough, but passable. As I drove away, I looked back once. The tent was small against the wide landscape, barely noticeable. But I knew what had happened there. An old woman, alone in the cold, had stood her ground not out of heroism, but because those animals depended on her. I didn't think of her as someone who fought wolves. I thought of her as someone who refused to leave what was hers to protect, and somehow that felt far more real.